Hello! In this video, we will discuss the different usage of the quantum listeners and how you can pass them only when you need. Let me give you an example. You probably have regression executions or specific project executions that you run from your Jenkins, Bamboo, or other CI tool. But you also execute your tests locally for debugging purposes. So whenever you run the test from Jenkins, you have listeners that, for example, are reinitiating the driver every 1 hour for the longer executions, or you have other listener that is checking the device availability before to pick it up, or a listener passing a specific conditions that you need only during your Jenkins executions. But you don't need all these listeners during your local executions. They could cause you a problem, slow down the execution, or the scenarios could be totally different. So how you handle the situation where you need the different listeners depending of the type of your execution. By default, the listeners for your project are listed here in the application properties files. Here is my application properties file, and here are the listeners that are coming with your quantum project by default. You probably noticed that I have one additional here. I've created it just for the purposes of this video. It will only print out 2 lines for us to show that it's being executed. So right now I will simulate the Jenkins execution. We will execute this testng web XML file. It will reach out to application properties. We'll check which are the listeners listed there, and we will run them as well. And yes, here are our 2 lines that we were expecting to see from my additional listener. Okay, let's imagine now that I need to run all of my tests locally for debugging purposes, and I don't need this listener to be executed with them. You just have to copy or create a brand new testng XML configuration file that you will use only for your local executions. Let me rename this one to local. And in your local XML file, you need to put one additional parameter. Here it is. I had it commented out, so I can just keep typing, but in general, it has to contain the name of the parameter, which is the same name as the one from the application properties file. And for value of this parameter, you have to put the listeners that you need for your local executions only. In my case, I will just keep the listener that is coming with the quantum project, and we will skip the one that I've added additionally for my so-called Jenkins executions. So right now, let me save it. As soon as I run this local XML file, I don't expect to see these 2 lines here at the bottom because they are part of a listener that I'm not passing to my execution. Let me run this one. And yes, we do see the driver initiation started, but we don't see the 2 lines anymore just because they are part of a listener that I'm not calling in my execution. So what is happening is that by default, Quantum will check all of the parameters that you're passing with your application properties file, but as soon as you have the very same parameter in the XML configuration file itself, it will override the one from the application properties, so your Quantum will actually run with the parameters by the XML with a higher priority. In our case, I just changed the value for this one. So I've changed this value with a value that contains only this first listener, and this was the reason that the second one was not executed and we don't see these 2 lines at the bottom. I hope this video was helpful. See you on the next one.